Thank you very much. Topic of nature and nurture biodiversity capital for food security. Indeed, everything is severely being impacted and getting effect from the global warming and climate change. Speaking of which, our next session will be all about it, including the food innovation and food security, of course. Ladies and gentlemen, according to United Nations, climate change is the defining issue of our time. And we are at a defining moment in life. From shifting weather patterns that threaten our food production to rising sea levels that increase the risk of catastrophic flooding everywhere, especially in Thailand, Southeast Asia as well. The impacts of climate change are global in scope and unprecedented in scale. So now I would like to bring you to our next topic titled The Food and Climate by Ms. Sara Roversi, the Future Food Network, Future Food Institute from Italy. Blending the power of education and technology with inspiration to powerfully influence the food industry is the name of sustainable development. Sara is an experienced entrepreneur, thought leader, and disruptor in food ecosystem and security programs. As a seasoned growth expert, she works with globally recognized high-profile think tanks on setting the agenda for the sustainable food industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sara Roversi.
Thank you so much. It's a great pleasure and a great honor to be with you, with Foodinopolis, with TMA, with all our Thai extended family. So there's so much to say when we're talking about the connection between food and climate. And those days are pretty important because in Glasgow is taking place COP26, the big summit, where part of the debate is going for sure touch some of the key points of the global food chains. I'm a food entrepreneur. I started together with Professor Matteo Vignoli 9 years ago, the Future Food Institute. And we decided to found the Future Food Institute because we were feeling the need from two very different perspectives, because he's a professor coming from academics, I come from the industry. We were feeling the need of solving a big issue that is the tension and the collision between the needs of humans and the needs of the planet, where food is at the epicenter. And so when we started, the pretty fascinating aspects was starting focusing about what's the value of food? What's the role of food in our life? And if we think about that, there's a lot to say. I want to just to scroll very quickly many items, many topics, many keywords, just to highlight how much food is important in our life. Because food is life. Food is energy, of course, is our nourishment, give us the power, is our fuel. Food is also love, because through food, we share experiences, we are connecting with our family, we are sharing care for our beloved ones. Food is always connected to every celebration. Food is something that is bringing us in very deep experiences. We get emotional when we talk about food. Food is the first way on how we can get included in our community. Food, of course, is the epicenter of the community. We do a lot through food. We celebrate our traditions. It's the key pillar of our culture, our identity. Every religion and every ideology is connected to food through symbols, through rituals. So really, food is something that is embedding all the values sometimes in which we believe or that we protect. So why is it such an important thing to talk about food and seeing food and the connection between food and the planet? Because food has the power to connect humans, to unite us. Food is a language, but also food systems are hiding some of the biggest paradoxes of our era. When we're talking about food, we're talking about health of the people and health of the planet. We're talking about probably the biggest issues the global, say, ecosystem are facing. let's be very focused on which are the impact. When we talk about food, you all know how much the agricultural system, the global agricultural system, is impacting on food. And not only the agricultural system, because if you add to the numbers that we are creating through intensive agriculture, of course, we add all the numbers of distribution, of course, the numbers are going to raise up to almost the 40% of the impact. And those data are, of course, scaring, and even more scaring if you start to focus about the scarcity of the global resources. The 70% of the water available in the planet, we know, is used for agriculture, while nowadays, adopting technologies for smart farming, we all know that we can save up to the 90% of this water. So there's a lot that can be done overall when we think about resources. And another very key resource we have is soil. And we know how much the entire planet is at risk of desertification in the next years ahead. And then when we talk about resources, we have to talk about how much we are wasting of those resources, because we also know that one of the biggest challenges we are facing is fighting food waste. 1/3 of the global food produced goes in our trash. And this means 1/3 of the water, 1/3 of the soil, 1/3 of the energy and the labor. So we are really wasting our planet. And this is, of course, a huge cultural issue. And if we combine that with the impact of the health of humanity and the nonsense behind the disruption of food system that is making people sick, there are more people dying or suffering for obesity, overnutrition, and bad nutrition compared to people dying for hunger, that anyway is a global issue. So when we're talking about food, we are really talking about the nexus between humans and the planet. And this is a huge issue because it combines with some of the biggest geopolitical battles we are facing. And our plates are embedding huge challenges that we as consumer and we as food leaders, we are in charge to tackle. This number is one of the numbers that I think is representing the complexity of food system. 1/5 of the calories we consume has crossed at least one international border. Why the complexity? Because, of course, it's interesting to read the tweet from Elon Musk last week answering to the World Food Program about how might we fight hunger, saying, I can give you the 6 billion you need to solve the hunger issue in the planet. But it seems like a joke because, of course, when we're talking about food, we're talking about diplomacy. We're talking about geopolitical relationships. And so this is something that is not so easy to solve. And then, of course, the big question that I've been answering in the past 9 years was how much we're going to feed the 10 billion people by 2050. Shall we produce more? How might we manage the growing population? And this is a question that for sure comes up in my mind very often. But at some point, I always started thinking where we're going to live by 2050. Because we know that the 70% of the global population is going to live in hyper-urbanized centers. That all our rural areas are going to be more and more abandoned. And when we're talking about that, we need to think by 2050, what's going to be the shape of the planet? Because we're going to have part of the planet that is going to age a lot. And part of the planet, Asia and Africa, that is going to be a very young part of the world. And if you see the shape of those two cities, this is a real picture. And this scares me so much thinking about Italy, for example. Italy is my country. My country is going to be almost halved in the next years ahead. And so thinking about food, thinking about the climate issues we are going to face, we have to think also not only about technicalities while finding solutions, but also who's going to be our customer tomorrow? What's going to be the shape of the cities of tomorrow? What's going to be the needs of those population tomorrow? And this is the last number I'm going to share with you, because we're all focused to the deadline of the Agenda 2030 that is pretty clear in all our heads. Then we're talking about the 2050, where we know about the numbers and the scary thing about climate. And if we don't manage to lower the heat of the planet, we know that it's going to be a catastrophe. But also, if we see these numbers, this is pretty interesting, because while we are all focused to produce better in a more efficient way, we have also to think about what kind of planet we're going to leave to our nephews. If in 2100, the planet is going to be smaller in terms of global population and demography, but there's going to be entire part of the world that are going to be almost halved. If we're talking about Japan, or we're talking about countries like Italy and other European areas. Then, of course, the pandemics arrived, and the pandemic, of course, changed our life a lot and gave us the opportunity to reframe the set of priorities. And while watching the set of priorities, analyzing what was happening all around the world, because our institute is located both in Asia, in US, and in Europe. And while the pandemic started, we were really studying the effects all around the world. And the humanity was answering everywhere in the same way. We really felt that the Maslow pyramid is a reality, because we all reacted in the same way. First of all, we were feeling the need of starving and feeling the need of food with the risk of running out of everything. So queuing in front of the grocery store. And then, of course, the major focus was providing food for my family and make sure we are safe. Right after, we started investigating about what's the quality of food. So we started talking about trust, redefining the concept of risk. Can I get COVID eating this? And after a little while, we started thinking where this food is produced, how many miles it made, starting talking about food sovereignty, starting watching tons and tons of produce in the land that couldn't reach the distribution challenges and the channels, and understanding that the global food system is not resilient at all. And so when we're talking about food and climate, we strongly believe we need to have a very integral approach. And when we're talking about integral ecology, we're thinking that this is the only solution. So thinking about the SDGs all combined and understanding that food touches all of them. Because when we're talking about food, we are not talking just about environment and health. We're talking about economy. We're talking about politics. And we need to have a social and human perspective. And also embed the cultural aspects, because food is culture. And of course, the environment. And so what's next? Together with our team and overall together with the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, in 2015, when everything started, because we founded the Future Food Institute much earlier, but 2015 was a very crucial year. In Paris was signed the Paris Agreement with COP21. The Pope launched the Laudato Si, that was the first religious book talking about climate change. And the Sustainable Development Goals, of course, were announced. And in Milan, we had the World Expo talking about food, energy, planet. So 2015 started the global awareness about those issues. And together with FAO, we were putting together this map, trying to give some kind of order on how we can tackle the climate crisis, starting from food, because we see food at the epicenter of our society. And so we designed this Food for Earth, an Earth regeneration toolbox, identifying 5 different areas of action, starting from designing climate smart ecosystem, implementing regenerative business models, farming system. Regeneration is the key. Implementing a circular mindset in everything, not just talking about circular economy, because I have to wonder also from where my suits come from and where is it gonna go tomorrow. The entire life needs to become circular. And then we have to bring back the centrality of food when we're talking about the role of food as a tool for creating inclusion, to solve issues at the local level. And then we can see the power of food in diplomacy and prosperity, because anyway, when we're talking about food, in the planet we are 7 billion now, 1.1 billion are employed in farms around the world. Food is the biggest employer in the planet and the sector in which there are the major issues related to human rights, inclusion, and of course, environment and climate change. So with Matteo Vignoli and the entire team, we started working a lot, trying to help institutions and industries to change the way we are innovating, creating a brand new approach that is not just based on the human needs, but based on the planet's needs, developing a concept that is related to the concept of prosperity. Prosperity means creating something that is good for humans and good for the planet. And going and building on top of that, after we created this concept, we said, okay, we have prosperity thinking. We are evolving the concept of design thinking that was just, but anyway, very good, positively focused on humans. Now we are adding the concept of life and the planet as one of the stakeholders that we should involve. But we need to develop a different approach, an approach that is talking about ecology in an integral way, combine the economic, political, social, human, cultural, and environmental perspective. Changing governance, because this is needed. If you want to regenerate, it's impossible just to centralize. So we're going to see brand new shapes of governance, where probably the leaders are going to be ecosystem builders, managers of ecosystems, because the power will be more and more decentralized, giving a little piece of stake and a little bit of piece of responsibility to all the different nodes of the system. And how we see that? Because we are embedded in a huge cultural revolution. In the last 12 years, the crypto world and what is happening in finance has been changing the digital culture from the bottom. And we're going to see a huge tsunami happening in every other sector, because this is not just a revolution that is touching one sector, but this is something we see that is going to happen at a massive level as a huge cultural shift. And I give you a very brief example in just 2 minutes, because here I want to show you 3 examples that are clearly letting you understand what we're talking about when we are talking about food and climate change, but overall under the approach of integral ecology. Here you have 3 amazing examples of sustainable cities. The first one in Dubai, that is the big center that the government of Dubai is putting together to tackle the topic of food security. There's a huge issue about food security in Dubai, because of course they are importing the majority of food needed here. And the government is investing a lot to create a huge food tech valley where they're going to be able to produce the majority of the food needed in the country. And their focus is solving an issue that is an economic issue and a political issue, fighting food security, producing food with vertical farming, with technologies, biotech, and so on. New source of proteins, a huge scenario of new food. Always in Dubai, we have another case that is the Sustainable City of Dubai. This is a private organization. They started 5 years ago, the first sustainable city. Now they're opening up in Oman, the fifth one, and they're doing a great job because they've been thinking about how might we create a sustainable society, designing a city that is embedding all the different elements. And they also are able to produce food over there, but they've been designing an entire plan to focus on the principles of biophily, thinking also about the environment and how people are living and how much people needs to be connected with planet and nature. And then we have a fifth case that is the one that is more similar to the needs of countries that has very long history and a cultural heritage to protect. And I am comparing those scenarios because all of them are matching the same standards in terms of energy, in terms of managing of waste and so on, but they have different issues. And here we're talking about an integral ecology approach, able to keep embedded all the elements, also the social and the cultural element. So nowadays, talking about food and climate means to see the epicenter of the issue, and we see food as probably really the nexus that can create and recreate the balance between the needs of humans and the needs of the planet. And this is the key. Thinking that every time we gather around the table, we are honoring our past. We are experiencing the present, being and feeling grateful and sharing food with the people we love. But also, every choice we make is connecting us to the future. Thank you so much. It has been great to share these 20 minutes with our Thai family.